Hey, it's Monday, the week before Christmas. Have you done your shopping yet? Uh, we're kind of there, but I am here on Litvak Leadership Live with my special guest, Jenny Sciborski. Gosh, I hope I said your last name right. Did I?
Sciborski, close enough. Close enough.
Sciborski, okay. And Jenny is the Chief Range Officer, President, and founder of the Liberty Bells Women's Gun Club in Southern Indiana. We're going to talk all about that and what brought Jenny into it. But first, we're going to talk about mega coats. Now, you'll notice there's another logo up there with the Litvak Leadership logo, and it's mega coats. So I am in a mastermind group, and we are collecting coats all across the United States and Canada for the unfortunate, for those that need coats, whether it is for a ministry, whether it's for a homeless group. We're supporting all kinds of organizations out there. Now, you may say, Sean, how can I be involved? Well, that's super easy. If you are in the Louisville area, email me or Facebook message me. There's my email address, and I will come pick up the coats from you and donate them to a worthy organization. But you may say, hey, Sean, I live in Chicago. What should I do? Well, this is what you should do. You should find a worthy organization in Chicago and donate your coats local, snap a picture of them, and send me an email with a picture of yourself in the coats. We are trying to raise whatever 24 by 24 is, that many coats across the country. Frankly, we don't think it's going to be difficult. One guy has already raised 60 coats. I've come up with 25 coats, but we're looking to frankly break 1,000 coats across the United States given to the less fortunate. So that's what's going on with Mega Coats. You're going to see this logo for the next 3 weeks until the new year. So Jenny, let me ask you first, how did you come up with the name Liberty Bells?
Pretty much it was just the group of ladies that we were meeting, and we ended up just putting our names in a hat. We picked things that wanted to represent our group and took a vote and whittled it down, and that's what we ended up with. So we just wanted something that kind of was a little more fun, a little throwback for a little more historic value. So that way, a little bit different too. So it doesn't seem like we have any other groups that we compete with a similar name. So that's what we found.
I love it. It's very patriotic.
It
So
is.
so you just started shooting in 2014. So was that the first time you had picked up a gun?
That was the first time I ever picked up a gun, pretty much because we're in Indiana, so we don't need to take any kind of classes to be able to get our carry permit. But I wanted to, as a responsible gun owner, I wanted to absolutely learn before I start handling a deadly item or possibly deadly item. I definitely want to
Right.
start learning before I just go out there in the world like a lot of people unfortunately do. And so I found a class nearby, and me and a few of my friends took that class, and I absolutely fell in love with it from the first time I was out there. It was freezing cold. It was like December or January, and it was so cold. And I'm like, I just can't wait to get out there to do it again. So I love when I can share that feeling with other people. So I just kept looking into different opportunities that I had, whether it be volunteering at ranges or helping instructors, and just continued on learning from there, and ended up taking lots of hours of handgun training as well as rifle and shotgun training, and just any and everything. I was there if I can get involved with it.
So when people are looking for a firearm, how do you suggest making that initial choice? Because I know when I've gone firearm shopping, it's just there's just so many options. I mean,
There
and
is.
how do you know you're getting something that is good for you and you're not getting ripped off at the same time?
Well, I don't know about ripped off right now, because buying a firearm, period, is not the world's easiest thing to do, just because
It
supply
is.
and demand is at an all-time high.
It is.
So right now it's a little bit different of a situation than in quote unquote normal time.
Sure.
But usually I have this question come up a lot. How do I know what handgun works for me? And If it was as easy as there's one gun that works for everyone, we just have one gun. But obviously, that's not the case. I pretty much equate it to what kind of, we have a whole bunch of different cars to pick from. Obviously, what works for one person doesn't always work for another person. But the first thing that they need to do, because people always want to hurry up, run out, buy a gun, and then learn to use it. I actually recommend taking a class, using some loaner guns, figuring out if you can go to a local range to rent, or if you can try some of your friends' guns, because there's usually, the gun community loves to show off their toys. So usually if you can find someone that has a firearm, if you want to supply the ammo, they usually don't have an issue with you shooting it. But my biggest recommendation is to start with at least a basic class so you can get some of those fundamentals so you know how to shoot a gun. Because going to a store and picking up something that feels good, what does that even mean? That'd be like me trying to pick a brand new car off the lot and I've never even sat in a car before. I don't know what I need. I don't know. I need to know budget. I need to know functionality. I need to know what it's, how I'm going to utilize that particular item. So if I don't even know how to shoot a gun correctly or how to handle it safely, I don't know what kind of gun I even need. Do I need one for home protection? Do I want one to carry? Do I have a budget to have two different types of guns? So you kind of figure out what someone needs a gun for, how quickly they need to get it to, because sometimes time is of the essence. If it's a situation where they're literally scared for their life, I might give a little bit different answer than I just am interested in learning to shoot and protect my family and become my own first responder. So why they're doing it starts that conversation.
So what is the so you're saying, gosh, I almost said Starsky and Hutch, which is really going to age me, and I'm talking about the TV show, not the movie. So what is the proper way to shoot a gun? Because we see movies and everything and TV shows, and it's boom. I mean, is that proper? Should it be two-handed? Tell us about that.
Well, kind of depends what you're doing and how you're doing it. I mean, truly, a handgun is exactly that. It's designed to shoot with one hand, technically. But best case scenario is to be able to shoot with two hands. And also best case scenario is to really just get that kind of one-on-one instruction, because it's very much something that you have to figure out. Even if you're using the same types of gun, loaner guns, whatever the case may be, you want to make sure you have a really strong grip and you really know what's going on. But most important is to make sure that you keep that finger off that trigger until you're ready to shoot. That's the number one problem I have with brand new shooters, because they've been conditioned this entire lifetime of seeing TV shows and movies with people running around with guns in their hand, finger on the trigger, and then they come to class and they literally cannot keep their finger out of the trigger, because we're going to always default to our highest level of training. And unfortunately, subconsciously, that is their highest level of training, that they've been seeing this through movies. Absolutely. TV and movies are getting a little bit better to have a little more discipline, but it's still a long way to go. And that's what people do. They think that it's totally okay, or even if they don't think it's okay, subconsciously their brain is saying, hey, keep that finger on that trigger. So as soon as they start doing anything, manipulating that gun, doing anything with it, boom, that finger starts sneaking right down to that trigger again. It's like, nope, keep moving it back over and over and over again. So that's a huge, something that simple or sounds that simple is not that simple, because you have to unlearn such ingrained habits. And I've seen that continuously. I used to work at a gun store and people would just get that finger near that trigger and unless we're shooting, that's the only time that finger needs to be on that trigger.
Sure. And your image has, there we go. Now you're moving again. At first it looked like you had frozen. And it didn't make sense to me. So tell me about what was the genesis that started the Liberty Bells, because it's a club for women, and I'm reading from the website, obviously, by women promoting gun safety. Why did you see a need for a women's gun club?
Well, a lot of it is from when I got started. I would be on the range, and unfortunately, it's still pretty much the good old boy system. It's come a long way, but it still has a long way to go where you show up to a range and typically you're going to see, no offense, but you're going to see usually an older white person at the range, and that's the vast majority of what people typically think of as gun owners. I've noticed since 2014, women have become the highest demographic of gun ownership. So there's a lot of need for women to be able to learn what they need to do and have a resource. And women learn different than men. And
Women are
especially in
the
those
highest demographic of gun ownership.
mhm. With recent gun ownership, the past year we've had 17 million. As of October of this year, we've had 17 million new guns get sold to people. They're estimating that 40 to 50% of those guns in general are sold to brand new gun owners, and that the
Okay.
vast majority of those are women. Because
Wow.
women are really stepping up and taking ownership. I've spoke to a lot of women who said, I never, ever, ever thought I'd be talking to someone about wanting to own a gun because it was just something that wasn't something that they felt was appropriate. But with the way that the world is, I mean, we can't even go to the store and buy toilet paper of our choice at the moment.
Right.
So if I have kids to take care of and I have a family to take care of, I'm going to start thinking about the world a little bit differently when I can't just go to the grocery store in America in 2020 and just go buy anything and everything that I need as long as I have the
Right.
funds to do that. That, with all the unrest, with all the issues with violence increasing, the talk of
Right.
defunding the police, that's terrifying. And it should be, because I mean, you can't just have a lawless nation, and that's what some people want. So people are taking it upon themselves to do what they feel is appropriate to protect their family. And when a woman decides they're going to do something, we pretty much know that she's going to do whatever she's going to want to do. So I wanted
So,
to definitely have a resource for that available.
so how long did it take you to get the Liberty Bells off the ground?
Um, we had pretty much a pretty solid group of probably maybe 10 to 15 girls. I had to figure out how
Mhm.
to become a non-for-profit. I had to figure out how to create a business entity within the state and file for all the paperwork and do all that. So it took a little while, and I was hoping I was doing everything correctly, but it seems to, because I got the government award letter saying that we were awarded that. So we were able to get everything that we needed. And we pretty much had usually a good core group of girls, 15 to 20 members. Then it started to grow a little bit. Usually for the past couple years, we've had on average about 40 to 50 members. This year,
Okay.
we've seen an increase in interest, and we currently have close to 80 members right now on our
80
roster.
members. So
Mhm.
when you have your events, because I see here on the website you've got and I'm assuming it's good that I've got the website site up to show people. So you've got a ladies only range day coming up this Saturday. How many women normally come out to that?
Kind of depends. A lot depends on the weather. December is always a little hit or miss, just because we usually have Christmas things going on. And one thing about having an all women's gun club is that we have to compete for women's attention and money. And that's not always the easiest thing to do because family always comes first, which we understand. But a lot of times we'll have up to 20 ladies sometimes for outdoor range days, sometimes very similar in count to the indoor range days. Sometimes we have about 10, which is fine because the less people, the more shooting we get to do, because we always want to make sure that it's a safe environment. Because the one thing that we do for all of our range days is that we have certified range safety officers that are there with all of the shooters. So that way we can ensure safety for everyone.
So tell us about what is the safe way to fire a gun?
Pretty much, like I said, you want to make sure that you keep everything down range or in the direction that you're wanting to shoot. And quite honestly, the more you practice and make sure you have good technique. That's why even if it's not me as the instructor, as long as you go to a qualified instructor, because unfortunately there's lots of instructors that are instructors, but they're not so much qualified. And usually you don't know until you go, but that's how every industry is. But
Right.
you want to make sure that you're definitely keeping your fingers and hands where they need to be, keeping that finger off the trigger, making sure you stay on that front sight, because wherever that front sight is when you end up pulling that trigger, as long as you're not moving that gun, that's where your hole should be. Much easier said than done.
Much
Much easier said than
easier
done.
said than done. So, you've got various officers in the organization. Do the officers all come from a law enforcement background or law enforcement families, or are y'all just people that have gotten interested in firearms?
I honestly don't think we have any law enforcement in our entire group, quite honestly. If we do, I'm
Really?
not aware of them. So all of us are just civilians that most of the ladies, honestly, in my gun club are former students. And so I must have done a pretty good job, and they must have been pretty interested since they drank the Kool-Aid and joined the club.
Right,
So a
right.
lot of them, that's how we meet a lot of these ladies. Either I put as much communication out on local Facebook groups just to try and get people interested so they know that we're a resource out there in the community, because it's not just limited to Indiana. Most of our ladies are from Indiana, but we do have some ladies from Louisville as well. And we don't discriminate as long as you're legally able to own a firearm. If you want to go shooting, we're going to provide a safe environment for that to happen.
So what are your thoughts on concealed carry?
I'm a huge advocate since I do it pretty much anytime I walk out the door. In Indiana, our permit is actually a carry permit, so it's not necessarily a concealed carry permit. That'll actually, can you still hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I lost audio on my side, so hold on a
Oh,
second.
okay.
Let's see. Maybe.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Oh, and
I can hear
there
you.
we go.
Sorry.
Okay, good. No worries.
Bluetooth things want to start picking up all of a sudden randomly, always.
Yeah.
Um,
So I
Gosh, now I
thought
got all
Indiana,
distracted.
I mean, and I don't have my wallet in my back pocket, but I thought Indiana had a concealed carry permit. I have a
It's
concealed
not.
carry.
It actually, if you look at it, it just says it's a carry permit. So it doesn't dictate if you want to walk around with it strapped to your belt. You're more than welcome to do that with that handgun permit as long as you have that handgun permit within the state of Indiana. And different states, such as Kentucky, do recognize it as well. However, I personally don't always advocate for walking around with an open carry item just because you're usually the first target that they'd take out. So I really don't want to
Right.
advertise that I have a gun with me. So usually the only time I'll open carry is if I'm at the range. So that way I can, for demonstration purposes, and be able to get it out easier. But otherwise, I'm concealed.
So other than the obvious benefit of protection, what are some of the other benefits of learning how to use a firearm?
Honestly, my number one for me isn't even protection. For me, it's hobby, because you definitely meet a very diverse group of people. The ladies in our group, we have ladies that range probably in their 30s up until their 80s. So everyone, like I said, has a very diverse background. And it's very interesting because we all come together because the one thing we're interested in is learning to shoot well. And for some people, it's that sense of community. And so they have people that they can pretty much have those relationships with, that you're all kind of in the same boat. You have the same thoughts, at least in regards to firearms. Obviously, you're you're there, so you support firearm ownership and you want to support safety. So that's always really interesting.
So, as someone learns how to use their firearm, are there various stages of knowledge?
Absolutely, because no matter what you do, it's like a never-ending sport if you want to go with it from the sports standpoint. And and I like when people come to me proactively instead of reactively, because it just breaks my heart when I have a woman that I can tell as soon as I start talking to her that she's had something happen and now she's scared, and that's why she's
Mhm.
there. And it's going to be a little bit more challenging to try and get past some of the mental hurdles that we might have to with her, which is fine. But in regards to improving, there's always a way to improve. You can always shoot, you can do different techniques, shooting in the dark. You can do different techniques with the way different courses that we design when we have our range days, especially our outdoor range days. We have a little different scenarios set up. So there's moving and shooting. You can always work on your accuracy, work on your distance, work on your speed. It's a never ending situation. So especially for people that are like competition shooters, which I've done competition shooting, um, there's never going to be an end point. You can always make an improvement somewhere, make little tweaks, do things so that way you always have something to work on and set new goals for yourself.
So tell me about shooting in the dark. That sounds like it's. Are you talking about shooting into the dark, or everything is dark and you?
Ever-
Is this one of those
I
deals where you take your gun apart and put it together in the dark? What is that all about?
hopefully you don't have to take your gun together, take it apart and put it together in the dark. But you should
Okay,
be
good.
able to. Just as an FYI, so you know how to handle your equipment. But I've absolutely done low light shooting classes, which it has relatively very low ambient light for outdoor shooting is the ones that I've done. So it's not complete pitch black, but it's pretty dark sometimes, especially depending on what kind of weather conditions we have. But it's a very different environment because you then really have to, you don't have the distraction of everything that you would normally see in the daylight. You have to very much know what your target is and what's beyond, and especially because there's a lot of situations where people hear a bump in the night in their house and they want to go grab their gun and go look for what's going on. Well, is that really someone who shouldn't be there that might need some bullet in their head, or is it someone that, is it your teenage daughter sneaking back in the house? And
Right.
unfortunately, people think they have training and they think that that gun's a magic talisman, and they really need to do something beyond just unfortunately, most gun owners, from what we can tell, only about 1% take a class. And that 1% drops even way lower once they get beyond, because a lot of states will require a class to get their permit, and they
Right.
don't take any classes beyond that, which is terrifying. That's a very that'd be like giving you a driver's license and you've been behind the wheel for maybe one time. I mean, that would be
Woo.
very similar for that kind of
Yeah.
situation. Exactly. So people think that guns can just be these magical talisman type items, and it's not. There's a lot of skills, there's a lot of things. It's a lot of thought that needs to go into, is this an appropriate thing to do? How do I make this happen? How do you shoot in the dark? Do I have a gun with night sights? Do I need different equipment? How do I use a flashlight if I have a gun in my hand? There's a lot of things to take into consideration. It's not just grab and go because I hear a bump in the night.
Yeah,
So
grab
you want to be
grab and go is
positive.
what you get at a hotel when you're running late and there's breakfast there.
Exactly.
So tell us about one of your students or colleagues in the club, how you've seen them progress, and over what period of time, gaining confidence in handling their firearm.
For me, a lot of it is my intro classes that I teach. I teach at a local range and I teach privately. And my personal favorite is just spending a couple hours, especially if I have an opportunity to do it on a one-on-one or a smaller environment, the bigger the class, the more challenging it gets because everyone's at a different level and different comfort level and different mental level. But more personal one-on-one training, I absolutely love when I have someone who's never had a gun before, they've never touched a gun before, and they're terrified of it. Whether they try and act like they're not, I could tell that they're terrified of it. And as we continue to work with it and understand what we're doing and work through it in just even a couple of hours, their confidence level has grown completely. They're able to handle the gun with a lot more confidence. They're able to, even if they're not Navy SEALs, and I always tell them, you're not going to be a Navy SEAL the first time we see me, but you're definitely going to be able to have a lot more safety and knowledge to go with that. So that way you have that confidence to start building. And then hopefully we see them again for some more training, because honestly, the more you train, the more confident you become. And the more serious you take it, the more training you get, the quicker that's going to happen.
So Kenny Mayberry from Annie's Pizza in Louisville, best pizza in Louisville. He wants to know if you recommend a gun class for someone if they already have a permit.
I absolutely do. I think that everyone should take at least one class a year if they can afford it. I know with ammo and cost,
Right.
that's not always an option, but one, find a qualified instructor. But a qualified instructor can still be pretty reasonable, even locally. Some classes I've done, it's been $1,000 weekend by the time I travel, pay for the class, pay for ammo. We go through a lot of ammo sometimes, but it
Right.
doesn't have to be that extreme. But I have people, competition shooters that are very top competition local shooters, that they will continue to go back, and especially after being cooped up all winter and spring starts to break again, they'll go back and take a beginner class, because every place that you screw up when you're shooting is going to be a fundamental. So if
Well,
you're doing something, you gotta have those fundamentals in place, because 100% of the time you're missing your shots, it's because you don't have one of those fundamentals in place. And then you have to also work on mindset, because every class offers you something different and what you're going to pick up from it. Even if it's as I've taken beginning classes, the same quote unquote class, but every class is different because of the people that are in that class are going to make a determining factor on what might be focused on a little bit more, or different ways of saying the same thing to try and get ideas like over to some people, because some people are just very hard-headed, and you want to make sure that they are very clear on what they're doing whenever they're in that classroom situation.
So if people are in other parts of the country, you're in southern Indiana, so you can help folks in southern Indiana and Louisville. What if someone wants to take a class and they're in Canada, or they're in, I don't know, Miami? Is there a network that you're part of where you can help people out in finding instructors?
The NRA does list their instructors on their
Okay.
website if they have any classes coming up, which I don't actually teach the NRA class because the curriculum is sometimes required for certain states. That's the curriculum that they use for their permitting process. But in
Got it.
Indiana, like I said, we don't do that. So usually there's a lot of the NRA class is an 8-hour class. It's a very long day. And for a
It
lot
is.
of brand new shooters, that's just too much commitment. Even
Right.
sometimes getting people to the range for a couple hours of a class, it's a commitment. But there's no really good national place to look, but there are a lot of really good quality instructors. And a lot of it is just, if you find an instructor, Google them, see what the reviews are, see what they're doing. Do they, ask them, interview them. How long have you been shooting? What do you do as an instructor to keep up? When's the last time you took a class? That's one thing I've only probably had one or two people actually ask me anything other than they just believe everything I tell them. I usually give them a rundown in my information, depending on where they found me. But a lot of people don't go out of their way because they take a 2-day training class, they get certified, and they think that they're God's gift to shooting, and not always so much. So definitely do a little research on those instructors, Google them.
So does the Liberty Bells host any tournaments?
We do not, because a lot of our ladies are newer to shooting, and for them, competition's a little intimidating. But I have
Okay.
had some of the girls want to, because I've done competition shooting, and it can be
Right.
intimidating. And a lot of it is just, I always look at everything as a learning process. So competition shooting is a really great way to put yourself in unusual, very safe situations, but you have to make instant decisions on how to do something and how to address an issue. So that's what it's really good for. And as long as you do it in a safe environment, you don't have to be the top shoot. If you end up being the top shooter, that's great, but that's not why people should start going to those. They should just go just to get out, have some fun, and just to kind of get a little more ideas. Because the one thing about women, we don't like to really compete with each other. We like to support each other. So shooting with a
Right.
group of women, because I actually took a several-day class that was for competition shooting, and it was taught by top competition world record holding women who were our instructors. And it was the most unusual experience I've ever had, because typically at most competitions it's mainly male dominated, and it was just a very much different environment. All the women were, no matter how good or how bad you did, everyone's very supportive, and everyone's like, oh, you did so good even if you did not do so good. And the guys are like, as long as you're safe, just get it done. Just
Yeah.
get it
As long
done.
as you're not dead, you did good. So,
So
back in the day, there would be a men's group and then a women's auxiliary group. So, does the Liberty Bells have a men's auxiliary group? Kind of
we
flipping that
don't.
around.
We don't. We just let the guys do whatever they do.
Did they watch?
We just let
Well,
them do whatever they do. There is an opportunity, not right now, but the range that I do teach at in Clarksville, American Shooters Clarksville, they do run a competition where it's open to everyone. So that way there's a little more options for some of the guys. So a lot of times I would refer them to that specific location.
Interesting. All right. So we've gone shockingly almost 30 minutes. We're at 29 and a half minutes. It goes by so quick. So this is the part of the show where you take over and you tell everyone what's on your mind to leave an impression with them, to encourage them into the week. Go.
Ooh, that's hard. Pretty much is just, does it have to be shooting related or just anything?
It can be anything.
Oh gosh. Well, I think that a lot of it is just that we really just need to start taking care of each other and really think about being human beings again. Because
Yeah.
I can definitely see the one thing that I do love about the group is that we get to still interact because we have the social distancing ability. And for a lot of people, we can definitely see that it's wearing and tearing on people being locked up and cooped up in their house. So, especially as the holidays come and Christmas comes and winter comes and the dark days come, that we just really need to kind of keep looking out for each other and not have it be so dark and dismal all the time because it's a little scary of a world right now that we're in. So hopefully people don't get trapped into that.
There you go. All right. Thank you so much, Jenny. This has been informative. This has been encouraging, and I bet it's answered a lot of questions for people. I know you answered some of my questions, so
Good.
thank you again for being my guest here on Litvak Leadership. So everyone else, we have another show tomorrow. If you want to get in touch with Jenny to find out about the Liberty Bells organization, just go to www.libertybells.org. And hey, if you've got a coat and you're going to make a donation outside of the Louisville, Kentucky area, take a picture, send it to me on email. And if you're in Louisville, give me an email and I'll come pick up the coat for you and make the donation for you. We want to help as many people as we can. That's Litvak Leadership for today. Everyone, have a blessed day.